Welcome, everybody, into Missing the Point. My name's Joe Malkin, joined tonight by Bob Kelly and our EP, Craig D'Alessandro, and we have a very special guest for everyone tonight. She is an Emmy Award-winning sports anchor and reporter who currently works for NBC Sports Boston. Previously, she spent time at WQOW-TV in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, WDJT-TV in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's been at FSN Pittsburgh, ABC Sports, MLB Network, Big Ten Network, and FSN Wisconsin, a 1999 graduate of Marquette University. And since coming to Boston, she's had stints on WEEI, 98.5 The Sports Hub. But one thing we can't fail to mention is that back in high school, she was the captain of the Muskego High School Pom Squad, which is a badass name. Wisconsin native Trenni Kusnierek. Trenni, how are you?
That's quite the bio, you guys. I might hire you and bring you places.
Please.
Walk into a room.
I'm all about being a man. So we wanted to bring you on tonight and talk about what it's like to cover Boston sports, especially as kind of being, I don't want to call you an outsider. You've been here for a long time now, but being from the Midwest.
It's okay, Joe. Everybody still does on Twitter when they don't like what I say. So.
Well, of course. And they do it to just
Boston,
about everybody.
Boston loves to do that to people. We all know that.
Yeah, they do it to Felger.
Oh yeah,
they do it to the morning show guys, Toucher and Rich. They just it's what we like to do. Well, I shouldn't say we because I don't do it, but if you know sports, you know sports. Wow, way to call me out, Bobby. So I think we'll go to Bobby for this first question because this is something we were talking about prior to coming on. But what it's like to be coming from the Midwest. So. Bob Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, so my first question that came to my head is you have all this background with the Midwest. You've been covering sports for all this time from the Packers to NFL Network, now coming over to Boston. What is Boston compared like to the other cities that you've covered in? That's something that's just always been something I wonder is how our passion and how we deal with losing and winning and everything like that compared to, Green Bay or Wisconsin or Milwaukee, all those different cities.
Well, I love my hometown. I am more proud of Wisconsin now than I was this time 4 years ago. But it's not even close, right? Like here, sports talk radio shows consistently are the most listened to shows in the market. In Milwaukee, people listen to them, but only if you're like a hardcore sports fan. They're not like tearing up the airwaves. You don't have two regional sports networks. You don't have two like 24-hour sports stations. But also, to be fair, you don't have the money, right? So you don't have the same championship history because outside of the Packers, in a league where there's a lot of parity, it's hard to win. I mean, having grown up a Brewers fan, like I would give anything for them to like be in a World Series and finally win a World Series. The last time they were in a World Series, you guys weren't even born and I was 5. So like, and Felger was like 52. Just kidding.
That's about right.
So that to me is there's like a different passion. I worked in Pittsburgh for 5 years. Pittsburgh was really passionate as well. And then because I was in Pittsburgh, I did, for whatever reason, like we did a lot with Philadelphia, so I'd go there a lot. Philadelphia, like to me, Boston and Philadelphia are by far the two most passionate fan bases in the entire country. I don't even think Chicago, New York, LA, none of them compare to Boston and Philadelphia. But Boston wins and Philadelphia doesn't. So
that was going to be my next question because there's been, some videos that go around now with social media, professional athletes and sports reporters and of the like. Everybody gets to give their opinions and answer the questions. And there was a Chris Gronkowski video that going around where they asked him what his favorite city to play in was and what his least favorite city to play in was. He said his favorite was Green Bay because everybody was nice. He thought that everybody was just being nice to him to psych him out. And he said the worst place he played was Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Like how okay, I won't
fan wise.
I won't get R-rated on this because I don't know if this is a family show, but I once
you can get as R-rated.
I once went to okay, I can get R-rated.
Absolutely,
yeah, absolutely,
okay. Awesome. So I went to a game in Philadelphia. The year, I think it was the year after the Packers lost to that 28, like that 28 and 3rd and 28 game. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
back on Brett Favre. So the next year I go to Philadelphia. I'm in a Packers jersey. I'm way up like in a Packers section. And I'm walking around this, I don't even know if it was the new stadium or the older one. And I'm walking through the concourse. And keep in mind, at this point, this is 1 year after they beat us on 3rd and 28. They are crushing us at halftime. Like the Packers they don't even have a shot at winning the game. And I'm walking through and people are booing me and they're like kind of bumping into me because I have a Packers, like a Brett Favre jersey on. And a guy looks at me and he looks dead in my eye and he goes, "You can suck my dick, Packers fan, but you're hot." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "What just happened?" And then he tried to talk to me. And I was like, where am I?
The worst pickup line in the history.
He might have even used the C word. It might have even been more crude than like I remember it, but I was so like, wow, this is the worst place ever. Where if you go to Green Bay, I was there as a Packers fan and they were playing the Chiefs. And I think, God, every time I go, the Packers lose. I think the Packers had lost to the Chiefs. And like people were congratulating the Chiefs fans and they're like, "Where are we? What is happening right now?" Like, wait, you're congratulating? They're like, "Good game, man. It was close. Good game. Good game. You know, let's go get a beer and a Butterburger at Kroll's."
You know, it's interesting because New England used to be
amazing.
like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-2007, New England was like that, where a team would come in and we'd beat them or they'd beat us and we'd congratulate the losing team. And then after that, I don't want to. It's R-rated, right? I don't want to cry.
I don't think any of our shows. I don't think any of our shows have been not have been not. You know.
No, none of. Yeah, I understand. You have to put the little E next to every one of our episodes. So
it's
usually my fault.
But after the 2007 season is when we became not so nice to opposing fans, especially Jets and Colts and Pittsburgh Steelers fans. But I got to say, from all the stories I hear from Philadelphia, we're teddy bears compared to everybody else.
Yeah,
but. Go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like Boston, tell me if you think this is right, Trenni. Boston has that same attitude, but at the same time, it's more of like a friendly, like we're gonna hassle you, we're gonna do that, but at the same time, like we're still not gonna try and fight you. And that's what Philly does, is like it really gets down to it in Philly.
Yeah, like it does. It feels like there's always a fight that's like right on the edge. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe that's the case in Boston. And just because the teams here have been so good for so long that there hasn't been much to fight about.
Sure.
Or maybe now because I cover teams here and I went to those, like the games in Philly more often than not as a fan. So like I experienced it a little bit more, but I don't feel like I've ever been at Fenway, even like at Fenway for like a Yankees game or at Gillette for a Jets or a Steelers game or something and felt like, ooh, this might turn bad fast. Philadelphia, it's like, this might turn bad fast.
In New England, I've noticed as a season ticket holder that sometimes it's the opposing fans that are worse than the home fans. Seahawks fans, oddly enough.
Really?
Yeah.
Those
I mean,
granola tree huggers.
I know. You would think they must have been from Spokane or something. You know, like western part of the state. So it's an interesting story.
Don't call it Spokane like that. What do you have against Spokane, bro?
It's not as crunchy as Seattle. That joke fell flat. But so one thing. My wife is also not from here. She's from the West Coast. And when she first came here and started working in Boston, she worked at the New England Aquarium for a short period of time. And she had her first, okay, now I'm in Boston moment, because it is so different where our sports fans are a little bit friendlier, right? But not necessarily Boston residents. So what was your like first, all right, I'm out of the, we're not in Milwaukee anymore, Toto.
Well, so I did live in New York for a time. So I had been, and Pittsburgh has more of an East Coast sort of edge to it than it does Midwest. Like it's a little like rougher and tougher. So, but it's weird. One of my East Coast moments, I think like where I really was like, wow, this place is different, was I might have been here. I want to say it was the second time my brother came to visit me. So I might have been here maybe 2 years at the time. Or maybe 3. And my brother had come to visit me and we're on the T. We're taking the Green Line and he just starts talking to someone on the T. And I am mortified. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, in my head, I'm like, what are you doing? You don't speak to people. Like, this is the subway. You take the T, you read your phone or you read your book, you listen to your music, and then you get off. So we get off the T, and I was like, Brian. My brother's name was Brian. I was like, Brian, I love you, kid, and I know you're like just trying to be, like polite and chatty and conversational and friendly. I was like, but you can't talk to people when they're on the team. He's like, but why? The guy talked to me, was like, because he probably thought that you were like off kilter. Like, he probably thought there was something wrong with you and felt bad for you. It was like, you don't speak to people here. And he's like, but we talk to people all the time in the Midwest. I was like, yeah, and it's annoying. Nobody wants to be talked to when they're just trying to read a book on the tee. And he's like, wow. He's like, what's happened to you? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't talk to strangers anymore.
You don't talk to strangers, and you realize you were in Boston, and the sports fan base is very passionate.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of similar thing happened to my wife. She asked for directions coming out of South Station, and the guy basically flipped her off and walked away. So I was like, "Welcome to Boston, sweetheart."
Yeah, I do think people here, if you need something and you ask for it, I do think that the East Coast gets a bad rap. Like, it's just, I explain this to people in the Midwest all the time. Like, people here, it's just, there's more traffic, there's more people. And so if you I don't mind helping you, but I don't have time to hear about your whole life when I'm helping you, because I probably only have like 6 minutes to get to somewhere so that I get the right train. And then I keep so my day doesn't completely get thrown off. And so that's all it is. I think we wouldn't leave you bleeding on the ground. We would at least call 911, but I might not then like ask you your whole life story while you're laying there.
Yeah, sure. Which really tells
lifestyle over here.
Yeah, it is a totally like,
right.
I go home to the grocery store and somebody looks at my license and sees Massachusetts, and suddenly I'm in like a 15-minute conversation about you live in Boston. What is it like out there? Oh, I've always heard it's a beautiful city. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Is the clam chowder really that good? What do you do here? Is your parents? And you're like, Jesus, lady, I'm just trying to buy some groceries and get to my parents' house and have like a bottle of wine. And it's like they'll talk, and the line is backing up, and everyone just sits there patiently. No one says anything. They just stand there.
We're in Boston. At Boston, a Stop and Shop, would be a riot breaking out in the aisle 7 in the freezer aisle.
I would lose my mind. My boyfriend and I went to Nantucket. I don't mean to throw him under the bus, but he's kind of impatient, and we're waiting to get we were waiting to order like coffee, and something happened where like the guy who was in front of us was chatting with the woman. He clearly hadn't seen this woman in a long time, and I can just see him seething under his mask. Like, I just want my coffee. We have to catch a ferry. I don't know what's going on. Why are they being social? And I was like, they're just trying to catch up. That's when the Midwest comes out. And you're like, they're just trying to catch up. Well, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're right. It's just faster here, but it's so funny because now when you go home, you have a little bit of that mix of that Boston. So you're like, all right, come on, like let's get through this.
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, everything moves a little bit slower when you get west of New York City and Philadelphia. So, Bobby, go right ahead.
So I have one other question that's something that, because I saw you work in Wisconsin, Green Bay, you're a Packers fan, obviously, grew up a Packers fan. What is Lombardi Field like? Is it that amazing
Lambeau.
Out there?
Lambeau Field?
Lambeau. That's what I meant. You know
Lombardi Trophy.
Lombardi Trophy. You know what I meant.
It's all named after
Freudian slip. It's all the same.
Bobby, I was going to say she's going to click leave faster than you can finish this question.
She doesn't even know. No, but so
why don't you go make me a sandwich, Bobby? I don't know anything about sports. That's what someone would say to me if I had a Freudian slip. Why don't you go? She's so dumb. She's in with sports. Make you a sandwich. Lambeau, honestly, is once we're all in the
That was great. That was great, by the way.
When we're allowed back in stadiums, and I don't know when. Let's see. The Patriots played the Packers here. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago now. So they should be coming back up on the schedule in Green Bay in the next season or two. Honest to God, if you can make the pilgrimage, it is a really cool place to see a football game.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing like it. First of all, Green Bay is 2 hours north of Milwaukee, like 3.5 hours north of Chicago. I mean, once you get like a little bit out, like you're passing places like Sheboygan. You're getting up near today I had to like write out my grandma's card to send to her for Christmas. Yes, I still have a grandmother. It's unbelievable. She's in like Kaukauna. You know, my cousin lives in Neenah. Like it's just like it's salt of the earth, and you're driving up 90 or 43 north, like kind of along Lake Michigan, and you come up over this like bridge, and suddenly you just see Lambeau. It's the only thing that's in town that like stands more than 4 stories tall. Then you see Lambeau, and then when you get there, it's not like any other football stadium where you have like massive parking lots. There's 2 sort of smaller parking lots on either side. Everywhere else that people park, you park in like a Shopko parking lot or on somebody's front lawn. Like they'll charge you like, and they're like $20 for parking. It's like, whoo, it's expensive. You know, but then you go in their house and they allow you to like use their Packer themed bathroom. And they've got like tailgates on side streets. It's like, it's such a unique experience. And even when you get in the doors, like the new atrium is really nice. They do have like I haven't been back since they built like an entertainment sort of district around. But even like the new like atrium and there's like a couple restaurants inside. But then when you get inside the actual stadium, the actual bowl, most of the main seating area is still bleachers, metal bleachers.
So cool.
That's
which
awesome.
I know sounds kind of miserable in like December, but if you can rent like little chairs that you can sit on, or just like wrap a blanket, you know, bring a couple blankets around your butt. To me, it's the best place in the world to see a football game.
We had that at Foxborough Stadium before Gillette, except
Now
Foxborough Stadium. Now it's all bougie. They have all these shops. There's a movie theater. We went there the other night to drive through the parking lots to go through the Christmas lights. I'm like, you know, let's be a little more down home, like Green Bay. I mean, Foxborough is more like Green Bay than it's like Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, but think about like when the national news networks come, like when they go to Green Bay, they take like shots of cows, and here they come like they rarely take any like scenics of Foxborough.
It's all Boston flyovers.
Boston.
Never. Yeah. It's always 45 minutes south of Boston. We're in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Exactly.
Well, they almost make it
one
seem
way
like...
in, one way out, by the way. What a mess.
Yeah, it's brutal over there.
Jeez.
They almost make it seem like it's right next to Boston, though, because they're like, oh, we'll be right back to Gillette Stadium. And then they cut to this shot of the Prudential Center, and it's like, well, you're nowhere near there. This isn't Chicago.
If I went from the Brew to Foxborough right now, I'd get there by like the 4th quarter.
Actually, funny story about that. I actually made it from... It was a 1:00 game. My flight landed at 11:30 at Logan. I got off the plane into my mother's car with my wife. We were coming back from a trip to Dallas. Patriots were ironically playing the Cowboys, and I got to Gillette Stadium at 1:07. I got to my mom is a crazy driver. She's from Providence, so she's kind of nuts. But I got into the stadium and there was only 2 minutes left. Everyone was very impressed, and I got a standing ovation.
That is actually
there was
really
a touchdown
impressive.
scored on the field at the same time, but I figured it was just for me, though.
Just for you.
It was definitely for you, 100%.
Oh, 100%. So speaking of the people in Boston, and now we've talked about the Midwest and what it's like to watch a game at Lambeau Field. I didn't want to screw that up like Bobby did.
Thanks.
Did you get that sandwich for Trenni yet?
Yeah, I did. I have it. It's cooking.
You have it?
It's
okay.
toasting, yeah.
Perfect. You did. That was really fast.
Good. I like my bread toasted on my sandwiches. Always makes just a smidge.
I figured. Yeah, exactly.
Also a mayo gal. Mayo and spicy mustard.
Oh yeah, all right. Well,
Mix them together.
Power
Yep.
move.
Mayo on one side.
Yep.
So, and now I'm hungry again. I've already eaten dinner. So
the sandwiches all around then, or
yes, if you could please deliver them from Albany. So I'm actually looking at a picture right now of you on the court of TD Garden. This is from Biography Tribune. It's from when is this from? It doesn't have a timestamp on it, but it is from your Instagram, and you're sitting on the court with none other than Drew Bledsoe and Gary Tanguay.
Oh yeah, that's when Drew. Isn't that like when he had he was there and he was like rooting for Terry Rozier or something, and then didn't he have like a rosé for Rozier? Like, wasn't there something with that?
Oh yeah.
And then they had Terry showed up with a Bledsoe jersey the next day. Yep.
Yeah. Which is, because I think he's wearing the shirt in that interview, because it's just a T-shirt, so it must be his wine company, which I've always wanted to try his wine.
I've never tried it either, but I've actually heard it's pretty good.
Oh, well, he's doing, I mean, he played pretty well in the NFL, so, I made the comment last night on our other episode that the last quarterback that the Patriots actually paid was Drew Bledsoe. I got everybody fired up because
you're
everybody.
not wrong.
See, that's what I'm saying. Brady got some money, but he was here for a long time. What do you expect?
Trying to start a whole bunch of business now, Mike.
Yeah, she did just start a whole bunch of
That's
business.
that's going right in our group chat, right? Trying to be like, listen, Trenni agreed with me. So like,
Well, I mean, Joe's not wrong though. I mean, Tom Brady consistently over and over and over, listen, he's not poor. It's not like it's not like the guy's having to work a second job in the off season, but he certainly structured his deals, I think, with the hope that then that money would be used to put high powered weapons around him. And at least later in his career, post 2007, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
He never got an Aaron Rodgers type deal to like bring it back to the Packers. He certainly never even got like do you even ever get like a Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, who right now is like that? Who are the top 5 paid quarterbacks in the NFL?
Well, Dak
Brady might be one of them.
Matthew Stafford, Dak, yeah.
Yeah, I thought Dak Prescott was on that list. Like Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford. And come on, Tom Brady.
Hey.
So you mentioned
I'm a Cowboys fan, by the way.
Hey, what?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's a travesty. It's a whole. I know. First Lombardi Field. Now I'm a Cowboys fan. I know. It's brutal.
Wait,
You're gonna need to go make another sandwich.
How did that happen?
So my dad's a Cowboys fan, and it just kind of happened. Like the first football game I remember was the Cowboys winning the Super Bowl, and we haven't been back since. But it was the first game I ever remembered, and I just fell in love with him. I don't know. I fell in love with Quincy Carter, I guess. I know. Crazy.
Quincy Carter, of all people.
So I know. That transitions to something real quick. Dez caught it, right? He caught it.
Yeah.
Come on, Trenni. Dez caught that ball.
Actually.
Dez caught that ball.
Just really just.
But it doesn't matter, because guess what?
Yeah, he didn't.
Packers advanced, so that's all that matters.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that they played.
It's like the tuck rule in the snow game against the Raiders. Like everybody knows that totally that swung the entire Patriots trajectory. Probably not the right call, but whatever. It's how it went.
So funny story about that too. The week of Thanksgiving, we talked to Dean Blandino. I'm sure you know who Dean Blandino is. Yeah.
Yes.
We talked to Dean Blandino, and that was one of the questions we asked him. What do you think? And because he was at the time, he wasn't the replay official in the booth, but he was basically the head of replay for the NFL at that time. And he said under the rules in 2001, it's an incomplete pass. Now, it would have been a completely different call, which is amazing to think about with rules and the way they are in sports. So I just have to change this because Craig wrote it in the chat, and I think it's our favorite Olympic sport of all time, and you covered it at the Sochi Olympics. You were
Sochi and Pyeongchang. Do not leave out Pyeongchang when they won the gold medal.
That's right, and Pyeongchang. I saw Sochi and I was like, done. She was in Russia, but you were also in South Korea. So, but what was that like to, one, cover the Olympics, two, cover the Olympics in Russia, and call curling? That's awesome.
So in fairness, I didn't have to call curling. That would have been an absolute disaster because so when I went to my first Olympics, I just got really lucky. It was in Sochi, and there were just a couple of people who didn't remember. I don't know if you guys remember this at the time, but they were really worried about terrorism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there were a couple of reporters, because they take a smaller staff to the Winter Olympics than they do to the Summer Olympics. And so at the last minute, a couple of reporters were like, you know what, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not going to go. They backed out. And so it ended up having a domino effect where like Steve Sands from the Golf Channel was supposed to be the curling reporter. And they moved him to short track speed skating instead. And then they were in a panic, and my boss, or the guy who hired me, was like, hey, I've got this reporter. She's, I think she can handle the assignment. Let's send her. And they were like, do you want to go to Russia? They had to like expedite my visa. They literally, this is how long ago it was. They sent me like DVDs to watch of like curling matches. And I'm watching and I'm like, how am I going to ask athletes questions about this? Like, this is going to be an abject disaster. But it wasn't. And it helped a little bit that year, the United States was so bad. Like the men, I don't think the men won a single round robin match. And I think the women won one, if my memory serves.
I remember that story because I remember in 2018, it was like a whole revamp of the curling system in the United States, which it sounds weird even coming out of my mouth. But yeah, I remember that.
Oh, yes,
they were so
have
bad.
like an elite. They have like elite teams now, like where you're put on like a path where like you train separately from like people who might not be true like Olympians.
Right.
So like AAU for curling, essentially.
Well, I mean, more of like an Olympic pipeline type of a program where you're, you participate in bonspiels or tournaments around the country, and they sort of identify their high level like performance athletes, and they put them on certain nutrition plans and weightlifting. Like they have kind of this whole different sort of training. It's kind of like being a high level gymnast. Like, they identify you at a young age and they're like, they might have Olympic potential, so you'll get ready differently. But the Olympics was an amazing, like, I feel so blessed that I've been able to go now I did Sochi, and then I did Rio, and then I was in Pyeongchang. And then I was supposed to go to Japan. I was also on the NBC broadcast team for Japan. Hopefully I slated to go this July. I'd assume we'll know a little bit more in the next like 3 or 4 months about like, how many people they can take over and what the parameters will be and whatnot. But it is such a cool experience. Like if you're like a news broadcasting kind of a geek, it's just a production on like the largest of scales. And it's also, I'm not going to lie, like kind of cool that you're just like grabbing lunch and Al Michaels is like next to you. Or, Doc does not remember this at all because he meets a million people. But in Sochi, I had breakfast like 2 or 3 times at Doc Emmerich.
That's
and
amazing.
I just did and he just sat and told stories for like ever, right? And I had to do this just like a Zoom interview with him like 2 weeks ago, and he was like, "Well, Trenni, it was really nice to meet you." And I was like, "Well, apparently our breakfast is going to be."
I was gonna say Doc was probably sitting there now telling this story to someone else, going, "I met Trenni Kusnierek."
No,
but
I guess not.
Definitely Al Michaels.
No recollection. I did not leave a mark on him. Whatever. It's fine. It's fine.
Does he sound as awesome in person as he does on TV?
God. Yes, he has that like deep, amazing voice, and he's just like a really, really great, kind guy. So yeah, I mean, and then like, and then not like, again, I feel like I'm sort of name dropping, like in Pyeongchang, like one morning we're sitting there and like Katie Couric slides up and she just like starts chatting with us. And one day she was like, "Would you take these pictures of me in these boots? I want to post them on Instagram." And I was like, "Sure." Okay.
You were Katie Couric's photog. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Amazing. So it's like experiences like that where you feel like you're part of this large, amazing, big scale, big time event, right? Like when I got hired at NBC, I remember telling them in my interview, like they asked like long-term goals for me. And I was like, one of my long-term goals is I really would love to be, I know that sometimes you use local regional talent at the Olympics. I said, it would be a dream for me to do 1 Olympics. And now I've been able to do 3, hopefully 4. And then hopefully, because we'll have Beijing right after, Tokyo. Now they'll be back-to-back years, hopefully Beijing as well. But yeah, I mean, it's like in curling, it's fun for me because a lot of the guys are from like Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I I don't know if you guys are curling fans, so you'll probably remember this, but the Hamilton, Becca and Matt Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
Did mixed doubles, and then Matt Hamilton was on the gold winning team for Team USA.
Yep.
They're from McFarland, Wisconsin. Like I helped Matt pick out a Christmas present one year for his wife and like dropped it off at their house.
That's so cool.
And like, it's so random, whereas I covered tennis in Rio, but they're like real big stars, right? Like they're all millionaires. And like, I even saw them on the plane and it was like, I didn't even exist anymore, where to this day, I will still get messages from like John Schuster or Maddie Hamilton or Becca the Hamilton, or like somebody that played on that team, like that will just see that I tweeted something or posted something on Instagram and like comment on it. They're just so down to earth and so awesome. And it's a hard gig too. I mean, I'm not trying to like be like, "Oh, poor me, I have to go to the Olympics." But like when you cover curling, my first of all, your first event is the day before the opening ceremonies, and my last event is always the day of the closing ceremonies. No dark days. So most other sports get at least like 1 dark day, like just in case conditions aren't right, or to give the athletes time to rest. not curling. Curling is like every single day, like 3 sessions a day, where there were times where I was working like between 17 and 19 hours a day. Like true story. One time I went into hair and makeup and the woman was doing my hair and she's like, I don't mean to be rude, but like, you really need to wash your hair. She's like, it's really hard for me to curl it. And I was like, no, I swear to God, I washed it this morning. She was like, and she's like, no, it's really hard. So later on that day, I get back to my hotel room. I'm exhausted. I had worked all day. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I did wash my hair this morning and I never rinsed out the shampoo.
Oh no. That's awesome.
I was
That's
so
funny.
tired. I was so exhausted. I worked so many hours and my head was like spinning. And I literally put the shampoo in my hair and like put it in and barely rinsed it out. And then just went and like blow dried my hair and had no idea.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, we've all worked in some form of communications, but you mentioned working 17-hour days. Isn't that the best though? Like, I know this is wacky coming from somebody like coming out loud, but it's almost so fulfilling. Something about working those long days and just you go, and then it's like, all right, I got to sleep because I got to get back up in the morning and do it all over again. And it's like, it's just,
and then there
really
are times where you're like, you know what? I don't care how old I am. I'm still going to push it. And I'm going to go have a cocktail with the rest of the crew down at the hotel bar, you know, and then you're like, forgetting to rinse out your shampoo. Then.
So that's the story behind the story. Got it. That's
and
it.
Suddenly your hair is like in a ponytail. And everyone's like, why is your hair in a ponytail? It's like, well, I don't know. My hair person said it was dirty. Crazy lady.
Yeah, right.
Kept telling her that I washed my hair. And the next day I did sheepishly come back and I was like, so I technically washed my hair, but I also forgot to wash out the shampoo.
At least you came clean.
Oh,
geez, a dad joke, and I didn't even realize
you
it.
Didn't mean to do that.
Well played.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
I was on.
now.
It's ingrained when you have 2 kids. You just it's the dad jokes are strong.
Dad jokes just flow.
They do, and my wife is really getting frustrated with the fact that I basically talk in dad jokes and movie quotes. So
she's not the only one.
I understand, guys. I'm so sorry. All right.
No, you're not.
Gosh, don't ruin it. I mean, we just met Trenni. Okay, we don't want to ruin this. Of the 3 Olympics, which was your favorite?
I mean, I like them all. I guess Rio, but just because I like the Summer Olympics, I like warm weather, and I was able to really sort of like get out and kind of do things. But I would put Pyeongchang at like a 1A. For the simple fact that when you get to cover anyone from the United States winning a gold medal, it is the coolest experience. And to watch it was such a like legitimate, like not legitimate Cinderella story, but like, I guess it was, like a legitimate Cinderella story. Like no one expected the United States to win the gold. And Russia was special because it was my first, but Russia was weird. Russia was a weird place. Like, first of all, it felt like we felt really isolated. And everything was like, you had to wear your badge everywhere you went. So like I was training for the Boston Marathon at the time. And like, I would have to, like, you have these huge badges and I had to like tuck it in and my back, like around my neck and down the back of my shirt. And also it was warm. This is so weird, but it was like usually in the 50s or 60s in Sochi all the time. Cause we were down at the coastal cluster. And then like I would go running, it wasn't really safe to just run anywhere. So when I would do long runs, and there was like a couple times where I did like a 16 or 18 mile, I literally just ran across, they basically built like a track, like a straight line track outside of the hotel and it was beautiful along the Black Sea. But then all of a sudden, guys, it would stop. It would just stop. And then there was like weird fencing. And when I went to ask where to run one day, the concierge or whoever was like, oh, you can go this, in this direction. It's a couple miles each way. You can just go back and forth. He said, but when you get to the fencing on the far end, he said, do not try to walk around or go somewhere else. He's like, that's the country of Georgia. And if you go over, we can't get you back. And I was like, okay, all right, great. Fun times.
So you turned
Good
back around.
Yeah.
I did take a picture like, hey, I'm right by Georgia. But yeah, that was it.
Your times got a lot faster.
Yeah. Also they had like fake buildings everywhere because they had like raised this town in order to put up all the Olympic venues. And so one morning I'm like looking out on my balcony and I see, and I'm like, that's a weird looking house. And so I took a picture of it and zoomed in. It was completely empty on the inside. And they just had put like a tarp around it with a sketching and an etching of like windows and a door. to make it look from far away like a house.
That's so strange.
And there were stray dogs everywhere.
I heard that. I heard that was like a problem.
It was like a problem because they had kicked people out of their homes to build these facilities, and then they didn't let them take their dogs with. There were just dogs everywhere. And then they started it was awful. It was weird. With that said, there's something weirdly fascinating also about Russia, and it was a very beautiful country. It's a communist country. It's like it's weird. There's that's not a very eloquent way to describe Russia. I would like to go back and see Moscow and St. Petersburg. It's different. I shouldn't say weird. That's not right. People probably think America is weird from certain places. It is. It was a different experience. It did feel very cold and restrained. Like it just, whereas Pyeongchang and Rio, there was like a real joy, even though there's always issues, I think, everywhere where there's ends up being an Olympics, there's always some controversy, but something about those two places felt more joyful. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, a little bit different, South Korea and Brazil aren't exactly communist countries. So and you were a little bit further east in Russia. So when they say if you go over the border of Georgia, you're not coming back, that's definitely a problem.
Yeah, like basically they could maybe shoot you, and I was like, cool. It's not really what I want to happen.
Not going to do that then.
Yeah.
But trust me, man, every day I was like, would they really shoot me? Like, what if I just like swam over?
Let's find
one
out.
arm over the border. Like,
I did. I was like,
now.
I love getting stamps on my passport.
If you could just shoot my passport. So
you like a stamp gun? Yay!
Yeah. Oh boy. It's like a taser that just shoots out. All right. Anyway, so you mentioned you were name dropping before. You name dropped Katie Couric. You name dropped Al Michaels.
Oh God, now it's terrible. Now I sound like a jerk.
No, because we're gonna name drop someone else that we're gonna be talking to soon, and someone else that you know well and you work with, and that's Abby Chin, who we'll be talking to on Missing the Point on Thursday. To come out at a later date, but we talked before we got on about there was a picture of the two of you wearing a similar dress, so now we have to know the backstory, because obviously she was just hired back by NBC Boston. And she's coming on with us after we talk with you, so we want to hear about your relationship with Abby and what the dress story is.
Well, Abby, first and foremost, is one of my dearest friends. We started like 3 months apart. I started in September, like September 10th was my first day at NBC, which was then Comcast Sportsnet. She started like around the same time, but in December. So we've been like pals, like went to her wedding, I go to her kids' birthday parties, the whole nine. I've even seen them during pandemic, like in real life. I've seen them. Her and her.
It's like a real
husband.
privilege, right
like,
there.
I know, right? So she shows up today, and I'm so excited. I come back. I had curled my hair and put on my dress and stuff for my show, and then came out, talked to my producer, and I go over and I see Mike Gorman talking to her, and I was like, "Oh, Michael, hi!" I'm like, "Abby, Abigail, oh my God, you're back!" And she looks at me, and she's like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Oh my God, are we wearing the same dress?" And they weren't exactly the same, but I wore the one Abby had on today a few weeks ago. Hers was like more formal. Hers was like nice, sort of form-fitting, like really nice material. Mine was more of like a sweatshirty type dress, and I threw on like sneakers with mine, and she had like nice heels on. But the like telling sign that we both look the same is they had these like weird sort of Star Trek-y puffy shoulders on them. So we looked exactly the same. So we made Max Letterman, our producer, take a picture of us.
Mike Gorman wasn't wearing a dress, was he?
No, he was not. He looked lovely though. As he always does.
It
was nice before I was eating dinner, before I talked to you guys. I flipped on the Celtics game and I was like, man, it's nice to hear Mike's voice again.
Isn't it? It's great.
It really is.
We can't wait till next week.
God, he is so good.
Nothing better than hear him go, got it. Got it.
So great.
We're doing our NBA preview show on Sunday, so we're very excited to get into the NBA. And I am the least NBA fan of the group, but I will tell you, second least behind Craig, but I will tell you that a former Celtic currently lives in my head rent free, and I can't stand the guy, and I don't mind saying it out loud, and that's Kyrie Irving. Can't do it.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, nobody likes Kyrie Irving.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anyone that does?
Kyrie, maybe.
I'm sure
Kevin
there
Durant.
is. Like maybe his mom.
Maybe Kevin Durant. Yeah, maybe his mom.
Yeah, his mom. Yeah, well, we know his mom does. His mom seems like a wonderful lady. But so if you had to pick, I know.
It really is. Everything that comes out of his mouth is just facepalm. That's really what it's. Everything he says. It's just like, dude, what?
That's great. Everything that comes out of his mouth is face palm. I like that.
Here you go. Now, in Cleveland, we were having this discussion today. Does Cleveland win a championship without Kyrie if they still have LeBron when they won?
I'm going to say I don't think so.
They needed Kyrie.
Think about it. Kyrie did balance out LeBron and it forced defenses to be accountable for someone else. Because if you left Kyrie alone, which at the end of the day, when they did, he was the guy who made the big shot, right?
Sure.
Am I misremembering that?
Nope.
Right. He made the big 3-pointer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because you had to account for LeBron James. I do think that they made each other better. And I don't know that LeBron would have won if he wasn't there. Because LeBron wouldn't have won in Miami if it wasn't for Dwayne Wade and, oh my God, why am I forgetting?
Chris
Bosh.
Yeah,
I almost said Chris Paul, but I'm like, I know it's not Chris Paul. Chris Bosh.
And he wouldn't have won in LA if it wasn't for Anthony Davis. So,
right. Right. Like you can't, I don't care how good of a player you are, you can't do it alone. Like one of the segments on our show today was like Giannis in Milwaukee. And whether or not him being there for 5 years is like guaranteed Milwaukee's going to be good. I was like, first of all, I live there. It's never going to be good. They're like snake bitten. Second of all, like, are any of us really that afraid of like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton?
Not really.
I don't know that I am. And I don't know that you can get, I mean, maybe Giannis brings another big star to Milwaukee, but stars seem to want to go to like Miami and LA, not Milwaukee.
Yeah, and that's what I said today.
Nice.
But now that he's signed that contract, at least they have some kind of leverage to say, "Hey, Giannis is here. Like, come on in. Let's go do this." But
I feel like the way they're going to do that is by trade. That's how you're going to see another star come in there. But they honestly, like, because of that deal they made for Drew, they really don't have much to trade at this point. No. I'm with you.
Or if anything, you'd have to get somebody on like a short 1 year that just really wants to win a championship. But when you go after guys like that who don't need long-term security, you're going after an older guy. And so then there's always going to be question marks. So I don't know.
That was kind of the Boston thing back in, the late 2000s when they brought in Garnett and Allen, and that was kind of the thing. It wasn't supposed to be a long-term thing. It turned into a longer-term thing, but they won that championship on the front end of those contracts. So, I mean, they're going to have to do the same thing.
Injuries killed them. Bummer.
It's the way it goes. It's what's going to happen in Brooklyn this year. Kyrie's going to get hurt and start whining. And
also, KD is, I think, already like, I've had enough of this guy.
I think
cool
so, too.
From afar, but far from cool up close.
I agree.
They also said that KD was trying to bring in James Harden, and that Kyrie was basically saying no. That he didn't.
Looks thick tonight.
Who's that? Harden?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's because he was.
Did you say he looks thick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that partying in Vegas.
That's right.
Exactly
Way to commit yourself, buddy.
Yeah, right. I couldn't get his camp.
He grew the beard so you couldn't tell that he's got a little like chub going on down here,
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So go ahead, Bobby.
I was going to ask. So before we get into anything else, I want to ask. We talked about your Boston sports history. We talked about the fact you filled in the Sports Hub. Most notably, you filled in for Felger and Maz for a few episodes where they weren't there. Who to you? Who is the better? Not better. Who's the bigger pain in the ass, Felger or Maz? I'll just ask it straight up. Everyone knows they're both a pain in the ass.
And I'm gonna walk with you guys for a second. I have to open my door. My boyfriend's coming over. Ow. I mean, I should probably just give him a key, but I don't. I just keep opening the door. He can get himself in, but he can't get himself into the main door. I still don't trust him. I'm just kidding.
Relationship advice with Trenni Kusnierek.
Everyone is seeing my like 4-foot apartment. It's
I like that wall.
I know. I like that.
I have natural brick. Who's the bigger pain in the ass? So I have not had to work much with Maz, so I cannot speak to Maz's how big of a pain he is. I will say this about Felger: bark is worse than his bite. He plays this role like, I'm such a curmudgeon-y jerk on the radio, but he's actually like, I called him for some like career advice like a week ago, and he was like well prepared. He was super kind about it. Although he is, I will say this about him. This is where he's the same in real life as he is on the radio. No BS. Like, you know how he's always like, no pleasantries.
Yeah.
Like, does not really like when the conversation was done, he's like, all right, kid, good talking to you. Bye. And I was like, oh, we're done. Okay.
All right, Grandpa.
So know how you doing today?
So,
that doesn't exist with Felger in real life either.
You know what? I honestly, Bob, I don't think he asked me how I was. I think it was just more like Okay, so what can I do? What can I help you with?
Which is interesting
hey,
because
how are the kids?
Right.
It drives him nuts. When we used to work together, I'd be like, how are Sarah? How are the girls? What's going on? Fine. What are we talking about in this segment?
Which is weird for him because that shows that he's been in Boston longer than you because you're both from Milwaukee. So
I know. You know what, though? He's been gone for a long time. Like, he left Milwaukee, I want to say he was like 16. He might have been like a junior or something. And then he lived in Naples, which is where his parents are now. And then he came to BU. And Felger, not to like out him, but I think he's almost 50. So, if he came here at 18, he's been here for, is that 32 years? Yeah. Like, that's a lot, that's a long time. I mean, he's essentially more of a Bostonian than he is a Midwesterner. Though, man, he still has that accent. It's like,
yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Oh,
I feel as he plays it up a little bit.
Oh, he totally does.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll be honest, I can hear it a little bit in your voice still as well from time to time. Yeah. But again, you haven't been here.
If I have a cocktail or two, look out.
Yeah, we have friends like that, and then their Boston accent comes out, but the Midwestern accent is much more pleasant than the Boston accent. I think you would agree with that too.
I mean, neither. We'll call it a wash.
That's a good answer.
Harshest form, neither is great.
Fair enough. So one other thing that we really wanted to get into tonight is, for those of you that don't know, while Trenni is very straightforward and doesn't take any crap, just like Felger, she's also a big mental health advocate, and I think those two things go hand in hand. And in Milwaukee Magazine in 2012, Trenni, you are quoted as saying, "I had a 6-figure job, makeup people, hair people, 10,000 Twitter followers, a smart, attractive, funny boyfriend who I wouldn't give a key to, and I just couldn't snap out of it when it came to depression and anxiety." Talk a little bit about depression and anxiety and working in such a fast-paced job that you work in.
Yeah, honestly, at times, Joe, it was helpful to be in this kind of an industry because you have to focus, right? So you don't have, your mind can wander, but it can't wander for long because at some point you've got a producer who's screaming in your ear, or you're conversing with someone, or you're interviewing someone. So it's a good focal point. Where it was tough was it could be extra exhausting at the end of the day. Like, you have to constantly be on for people. And if you're trying to work through, any kind of like massive depression or anxiety, that's exhausting already. And you don't oftentimes have the energy to do basic life things, let alone then come home, then like go out with friends. When I was living in New York, that's when the article was written, kind of that time frame. When I was working for MLB Network and living in New York, like, I remember there was like a weekend that I had off and I didn't leave I lived in New York and it was like a beautiful, like, nice weekend, and I didn't leave the house. Like, I watched like, I think 2 seasons of Glee, and I did not leave my couch. And it was at that point that I realized, like, okay, things are kind of not great. And they sort of progressively got worse and then got better, which I think that's hard for people to understand sometimes. I think it's hard for people to understand that it's cyclical, that it's something you really kind of always have to manage and keep an eye on, and that it's not something you can just snap out of. It's not just as easy as, and God bless people, because when I am open about going through something, people always say, well, what can I do? Or how can I help? Or I'm happy to listen. And while that's wonderful and helpful to hear, it's also not always the solution.
Right.
Sometimes the solution is just being by yourself. Sometimes the solution is talking it through. Sometimes the solution is, more often than not, the solution is like actually getting professional help and talking to a therapist, or maybe even going on medication to regulate everything. And I hope as a society, I guess one of the weird positives of pandemic, I think, has been that it's shown a light on mental health issues more so than before, and made it more of like an easy conversation topic for people and less stigmatized. So I'm hoping that helps, that at least that's come out of it. Where you can do telehealth and there's easier ways to access care, and that ease of access to care continues after this is all over.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that you mentioned right there was sometimes people want to help, but you don't need it. but it's also on the flip side sometimes when people don't understand, or they try to understand but they just don't, and then they get frustrated with you, and then it kind of sends you into a cycle of, I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to help you understand, but you have to just absorb. And the person that you're talking to, or vice versa, if it's somebody that's having an issue and trying to open up to you. So it's very interesting. I've had that conversation with these guys. Bobby and I had that conversation a few weeks ago. Where I was having a tough time. We had a misunderstanding, and it was because we weren't, as we talked about before we came on, we weren't effectively communicating our feelings with each other and how we actually felt about the situation. He didn't understand what I was going through. I didn't understand what he was going through. And now we just argue about Jimmy Garoppolo being the next quarterback of the New England Patriots and Kyrie Irving being awful. So, but I know I meant to bring that up earlier and I didn't, so I had to throw something in there. But Bobby, go. I know you had a
yeah. So my question for you is, I know that as someone who also has dealt with something along these same lines, is it's always harder to admit that you're going through something because you don't know that other people are doing it. You kind of feel like you're alone. You're on your own island, and you're the only one who feels like this. Everyone's going to think you're crazy. Do you think that people coming out like Dak Prescott, Hayden Hurst, yourself, these people in these high-profile positions really push the depression and mental health issue to that forefront and really help make awareness almost just to other people who may not be dealing with this, that, like, listen, this is a real thing that not only normal people deal with, that people you think are crazy deal with, but people that are in these high respected positions are also dealing with these things on an everyday basis?
I hope so. I think it's really important for people to talk about it. And I always say, like, that doesn't mean that you have to like spill your guts to every single person that you meet.
Absolutely.
But even just being honest with like one or two people in your small circle, like I feel like that has like a ripple out effect, because maybe you tell one person about it because you feel comfortable with them for whatever reason and they're struggling, or they know someone who's struggling, and then they understand how to better handle it. I think what's most important about athletes talking about it is that a lot of times it's male athletes. And if there's one part of the population, one, part of like life where I think men, particularly white men, get really overlooked, is in the mental health sphere. It's still really stigmatized. It's like you're supposed to be this like strong person who can handle everything and not get stressed out, which is ridiculous. Whether you're a pro athlete or like, Joe Blow who's walking down the street. I mean, like right now, some of the people who are suffering the most are middle-aged white males. For various reasons. And to me, that's a group that needs to not be forgotten about and needs not to be stigmatized or told that they are wrong, or that their feelings aren't valid or worthy. That's a real crucial group, I think, that we need to address that. And honestly, like under like marginalized communities, minority communities, because in those two sections, I always say this: white women, like, we got therapy down. Like, everyone's had a therapist. Every girl I know has had a therapist forever. It was on like Sex in the City, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, it's all anyone talked about. Like, we're always talking about our freaking feelings. Like, it's not as difficult of a topic, but it is a really difficult topic for someone who's living in an area that is strewn with violence and gangs and drugs. It is a huge issue for, a 52-year-old white guy who lost his job and is trying to support his family and trying to put up this facade, that needs to know that it's okay to not be okay. Like, those are the groups, like, I think we really need to be reaching. And I'm hopeful that when somebody who is a 32-year-old superstar with $100 million contract says there were days I couldn't get out of bed, that 55-year-old of the family says, oh, I'm not crazy, I'm not a failure.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. And like Bobby said it, and you just said it there, is, it's even in this article where I just read the quote, all these things going for you and everybody thinks you have this perfect life and nothing's wrong. But there is that shot after the game between Hayden Hurst plays for the Falcons, right?
Yeah, it's Falcons
and Cowboys.
Yeah. The Falcons, not yet, because he was with the Ravens.
He was with Ravens,
right?
Yeah. And he went and found Dak running into the tunnel and stopped him. And it's such a powerful piece of video, because Hayden Hurst, his story is incredible, and how he bounced back. And it's just that big thing of, man, if people can advocate, and somebody that makes the money that Dak Prescott does and is much in the public eye, you're absolutely right, Trenni, that the person, that whether it's the 33-year-old guy doing a podcast or the 52-year-old guy with a family, you just have to be able to understand that you're not the only one going through it, and that, there is help of some kind, regardless of how tough or you feel you are, or as deep of a hole you think you're in.
And, I think what's telling about how far we've come is, I'm sure you guys saw this, like after Dak Prescott was really honest about things, Skip Bayless, called him out, said he kind of wasn't a good teammate, like suggested that he was weak or not a good leader for talking about it. And Bayless got skewered by people.
Yeah, he
like,
did.
You couldn't go through, I always like to say Twitter is not the barometer of what like real people think, but it does sort of show which ways, individuals are leaning and thinking. And when 97 or 98% of the comments on his comments are stop being a jerk, this is a real issue, to me, that's a sign of progress.
Absolutely, especially from those Twitter trolls, because the other 2% of accounts that Skip Bayless has following him are his burners anyway.
Yeah,
or bots.
Or definitely bots. On that same note, I actually saw a post recently about Dak Prescott. So I obviously follow Cowboys fan. I know, follow a lot of Cowboys fan pages on Facebook. And as you can imagine, the Cowboys fan base is a very diverse fan base, we'll call it. So someone posted on there, it was like, I think Dak Prescott's such a leader. The fact that he came out about these mental health issues shows how much of it, how tough this man really is, not only as like a person, but like spiritually, he's just a tough human being, and that like he needs to be regarded as this leader. Obviously, there was a comment underneath it that started calling him out like he was, less of a man and all this stuff. And the comments that this comment got were just like, it was like instantly there was 90 comments talking to this guy about how much of a bigot he is. So yeah, couldn't agree more that we're definitely going in the right place as a society. When you see people ganging up on someone who is trying to make someone feel less of a person for something like that, it makes you feel good. I agree.
Yeah, it's like it's like, okay, we haven't completely devolved as a species.
And sometimes those people that are making those comments are in other situations are trolls. But at that point, you realize, all right, let's put a human side to this, and let's not dehumanize someone because they're talking about their feelings all of a sudden. That's unfair on so many levels. Imagine that. I said that to Dean Blandino too about officials. I was like, let's humanize officials in football, and then he used it on his podcast the next week, and I was like, all right, we're resonating somewhere.
Ooh.
Yeah, right. Okay, so if you could just drop something Bobby says, but
on the show.
So one thing you mentioned earlier about how sometimes you cope with things in terms of mental health is staying busy, whether it's work or a few other things you mentioned. You mentioned you were training for the 2015 marathon when you were at the 2014 Olympics in Sochi. That was actually the second time you had to run a marathon because you not only run marathons, but you also climb mountains, like to take your solo trips. And you used to take motorcycle riding lessons?
I did. I learned I hated it. Can I be honest? I hated it.
Why is that?
Me out because my anxiety was so bad. Like I was always afraid I was going to crash. Like I couldn't. I don't like lack of control.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I felt like I had no control over the thing, but I was doing it at the time. I was working in radio in Milwaukee, and like Harley Davidson was one of our advertisers, and they're like, "Oh, it would be a great spot if we like teach Trenni how to ride a motorcycle. We're trying to get female ridership up." I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And like, guess what, guys? On a tiny little bike in a parking lot, it's really fun. When you go actually on the actual road, no, I was a hard pass. So I did get my license. I passed my test. And then when I moved here, they were like, "Oh, do you want to renew your motorcycle license?" So I was like, "Nope, I'm good. Good."
Not here, especially.
Death trap. I think it's a death trap.
Definitely not in Massachusetts. Do not ride a motorcycle in Massachusetts.
No.
I'm
They
scared
require
in my
helmets
car.
here. They don't require helmets in Wisconsin.
Well, that's what we've been saying. Yeah, that's what we've been saying about New Hampshire lately. They're going to have to change their state slogan to "Live free and die." So
I know.
There's the dad joke. Sorry. All right. That's hard.
It almost felt like you had that prepared before the show. Like you knew we were going to talk about this. You know what I mean?
I didn't until she mentioned the helmet thing. I was like, we're not going to mention New Hampshire's state slogan. Well, one of our other podcast members, Mike Marcangelo, is from Londonderry, New Hampshire originally. So we can't tease him much because he's a Boston guy now. But, you know, how much of a New Hampshire person are you if you're from Nashua anyway? So so tell us about running the Boston Marathon, because it's something that I can tell you I will never do. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I've run it a number of times. I ran it in 2010, 2012, 2014, but I didn't finish because I almost pooped my pants. True story. And 2015. And then are you telling me to go back and tell
Yeah,
All right,
we need to hear that story. Yeah, we need to hear that one.
I'm 99.9% sure, by the way, that my boyfriend is standing outside the door just listening to this, too afraid to like walk in and interrupt it, because it only takes him like 6 minutes to walk here. He lives up the street. So, Sean, I hope you're enjoying this. So I
kind of our fault.
I had trained so hard for it. I trained while I was in Sochi. Like I gave up drinking, like, okay, not entirely in Sochi, but in the times around Sochi. Like I was determined to have the best race of my life. And like 3 days before the race, I'm at bib pickup and I'm like, oh, I feel kind of like under the weather. Like, I feel like, I'm like, oh, it's probably just nerves, just like a little cold, you know, body is like immune response. So I start drinking like vitamin C, like whatever emergency. And on the morning of the race, I get up and like my stomach wasn't feeling very well. And, you know, usually you have to have like your morning pre-run poop. Like that's just what runners do. May have been a few more than usual, but I was like, I'm just nervous. This is such a big deal to me. Like everybody's here. Everyone's cheering me on. It's the year after the bombing. Like they were going to interview me. Like Bob Newmeyer was at the finish line. I was going to do an interview with him afterwards. And so I get to Hopkinton and I get sick again a little bit. And I'm like kind of feeling like weird, like cold, hot flashes. I was like, I'm fine. I'm just nervous. Don't worry about it. So I'm like 1 mile into the race and I'm like getting stomach cramps. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm running like an 8:15. Like at this point, like I'm training to run like a 7:45, 7:50 pace, like well under like 3, like going under, like I'm hoping for like 3:25 to 3:30, like finishing time. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I'm not even going that fast. So like my stomach really hurts. And like the further I go in the race, I'm like, oh, something is not right. So I'm coming up like the crest over the hill in Wellesley, at Wellesley College in the scream tunnel. And like, I can't even listen to the girls scream because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have diarrhea in Wellesley. Like this is how it's going to be. I've been here for
most people have had diarrhea in Wellesley, just so you know.
I've been here for 2 years and this is what's going to happen. This is going to be my life. I'm going to be known. Falger and Mass are going to talk about me. Touch and Rich are going to talk about me because everyone's going to find out that I like explosive diarrhea on the Boston Marathon course. So I pull off, I find a porta potty. We thankfully have it there instead of, I had a Lamar Jackson moment. Let's just call it what it is.
I was waiting for it.
Nice.
And so I go back on the course though. I'm like, oh, I'll be fine. Like, unlike Lamar Jackson, I didn't get an IV afterwards. I was like, oh, I'll just drink more water and Gatorade.
You just dehydrated your entire body. And
oh my God, I was so dehydrated, you guys. I was so dehydrated by the time I got to like, it's around like mile 16, 17, right by Newton Wellesley Hospital. I literally could not see straight. Like I was kind of weaving to the point where a spectator like yelled, like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't feel really well. And I just sat down and started to cry. I was like, and this little girl, like, you want some water? I was like, yes, I want water.
No one was like, hey, maybe we should check on the Comcast Sportsnet personality, sitting on the corner over there.
No idea. Or if they did, they were like, oh, this poor thing. So I go and I walk to this medical area and the guy's like, I'm like sobbing. I was like, I trained so hard. He's like, well, you can probably finish. Most people can. We'll just get some like thicker fluids in you. We'll get you some like broth and like a higher like sodium concentrated Gatorade. And then he took my vitals and he was like, oh no, you have to go to the hospital. Oh, no. And I was like, what? And he was like, your heart rate is so low and your blood pressure is so high. He's like, you are severely, severely dehydrated. He's like, I cannot let you back on the course. And I was like, okay, the emergency room is right there. I'll walk. He's like, under law, I can't. They had to put me in an ambulance.
Oh no.
Emergency room sign. And then I went and told the story on Toucher and Rich the next morning.
So you got up the next morning and everything was good.
Nope, I felt like terrible for like 3 days because when I went I got an IV and stuff at the hospital, and the woman's like, well, it sounds like you have the norovirus. She's like, lots of people have had it was going around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she thinks that I had.
Oh.
But then I went out 5 weeks later and ran a PR. That's Sugar
Nice.
Local, Maine. So take that, Boston Marathon.
Yeah, take that neurovirus.
Take that diarrhea.
Norovirus. Nice, good 18-mile training run.
That's right. That's right. I almost ran into Georgia for this.
Sorry, I interrupted your accomplishments of running the Boston Marathon and making you tell the story about how you pooped your pants while doing it. We're very proud of you for running the Boston Marathon. That's a great accomplishment.
Nope, none of the other stories are good. All the other ones are just like, whatever. I finished. It was fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what happened in 2015?
So I was supposed to run this year, so hopefully I get to run next year.
She's like, I finished. I don't know.
So one last thing, sports related, that I'd like to ask you is, one, who is your favorite Milwaukee or Green Bay athlete of all time?
Robin Yount, not even close.
Fair enough. How about since you've been in Boston, and we give just about everybody the benefit of the doubt in Boston except for Dennis Weidman and Kyrie Irving. That's my personal. I can't stand Dennis Weidman. Dennis Weidman and Kyrie Irving. I don't know if Dennis Weidman was here when you were here. He played for the Bruins.
So. No.
Who would be your favorite?
He's held like a 15-year vendetta against Dennis Weidman,
and really have nothing to back it up. The Kyrie one I can back up until the cows come home, but the Dennis Weidman one, just something about his face. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. You don't like everybody's face.
That's true. What about in Boston? Who was, I won't say your favorite Boston athlete of all time, but who would be like one of your favorite guys to have interviewed, worked with, or just been around?
Okay, so Mike Napoli will always hold a special place in my heart because he's
Nice.
just a crazy person. And he made covering that team in 2013 so much fun. Like he was just a fun guy, like a good guy, easy to work with, because always go to him for anything. And also, I'm a huge Jaylen Brown fan.
Yeah.
I mean,
Nice.
everybody knows like that I'm a total social justice warrior. That is not going to surprise anyone. But like, I just think he's a really articulate, thoughtful, like so much more than a basketball player.
Yeah.
Guy.
Yep.
And I can't. And he's also, I think, also part of the reason I've done some mental health things with him. And he's a big mental health advocate. I'm also I love Brad Stevens. Like I probably am a little too easy on the Celtics sometimes because I like the players so much, like genuinely.
We'll remember that during the season.
Oh yeah. I have been a little harsh on Danny this year.
That's okay. It's okay to be harsh on GMs. We've been very harsh on Bill too. So
I'm a Danny truther.
Bill's been a terrible GM lately.
Oh, Mike's gonna love that. Well, so Bob and I actually got into it about Danny because I almost called the Gordon Hayward situation to a T, but just had the team wrong. And because Bobby was like, "This is great. He's gonna trade him to Indiana. We're gonna get everything back. We're gonna have Miles Turner here." And I was like, "No, Bobby, that's not gonna happen. He's going somewhere else."
I don't know why, but he does. Although maybe it was Drapes before he left, or it might be Forsberg has pointed out, like, those guys all played with Miles Turner last year internationally. And if they really wanted him, they could have gone to Danny and been like, this would be a great addition. And they clearly didn't. So
maybe, yeah. Maybe they thought Tristan was a better ad.
Good point, Chris Forsberg.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's a good point. I like
the
that.
The last name drop of the night.
Yeah. You can drop as many names as you want. We try to say that before every interview. We're like, just don't make them name drop. It's about them. Like, we're going to interview Trenni. We're not going to interview her about all the people she's been around. Like, we don't want to be like, hey, tell us more about Abby Chin. But
I love talking about Abby Chin, so I was happy to talk about her and our matching dresses tonight.
She has been very gracious to Craig through all of this, and Craig's like, she's got 2 kids, but you're on the show too, Joe, so we get this. Like, we can't start until 8:15 because of my 2 kids. They're both upstairs, hopefully sleeping at this point, not making their mother's life a living hell. But
you'll also find out about me that I'll tell the producer, like, no, I can only do 30 minutes. And an hour and 10 minutes later, I'll still be talking to you.
I'm not going to lie. For the last 45 minutes, I've been like I've been like typing the joke, wrap it up.
I'm probably should because I am 90. I mean, I'm not even 99.9% sure. I'm 100% sure my poor boyfriend is just sitting in the doorway, like on his phone, waiting for me to finish, probably playing chess.
Because I'm a radio producer, IRL, and so I like your producers. I was like the deadline, so I was like, come on, gotta break.
But they also know that if I'm on a show or an interview, that if we
me.
call for a half hour, it's going to be close to 90 minutes.
I know if any of you were on a show, if the interview's 30 minutes, it's gonna be 60.
Listen, when we get guests like Trenni, who just keeps going and telling stories, we're going to let her keep going. So give our sincerest apologies to John. We're sure he's a wonderful guy.
Oh, it's Sean, not John. But
Sean.
That's okay. For a long time, every time I told people I had a boyfriend, they're like, is it the donut guy? And that's a story, also a story. That's not a story I'll tell like publicly, but ask Felger that story one time. So poor Sean has been called now the donut guy and John. So who cares? He doesn't like it, never likes it to be about him anyway. It can always be, I'm always the center of attention. So it's perfect.
you looked very disappointed saying that.
You're like, but like, you know,
always without me.
Well, listen, and this is why we go into stuff
My
like
Christmas
this.
present might be getting returned right now. But
no, he's fine. He's right outside.
He doesn't have a key. He can't go back in.
That's true. I can just close the door. He doesn't have a key.
Well, please tell Sean that we are give him our sincerest apologies. But Trenni, before we let you go, please tell us what you're doing now and where we can find you.
Every night, Monday through Friday, on NBC Sports Boston Early Edition. It's me. Now it's me. I'm in the host chair. R.I.P. Gary. Not R.I.P. I mean, obviously he's fine and alive.
Yeah, we know that. We're trying to get him too, but yeah.
Oh, I will help with that. I will tell him that he should do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, please do.
But yeah, every night talking sports. During football season, we're 6:30 to 7. But once the Patriots are done and our football shows are done, it'll be back to my normal time of 6 to 7.
And where can we find you on
super fun sports talk today? I broke down Lamar Jackson's poop run. So I mean, you are going to get hard hitting things on my show.
We may have to find that sound clip and put it up on our Instagram just for people.
A preview of what you can expect on this show.
I feel like, you know what, Ted Johnson, you can take your little telestrator segment. I don't think it was anywhere close to me breaking down Lamar Jackson running to the bathroom.
Well, of course not. But if Ted Johnson's doing telestrator, he's just trying to be Bill Belichick. Anyway, well, now he's not coming on the show.
Wait, by the way, I don't care what Lamar Jackson said. That man definitely shit his pants last night. There's no doubt about that. The way he was running to that bathroom, that was I have to shit my pants running.
Yeah, I was gonna say he might not have totally come out, but he was holding it in.
Oh, it was in there. It was coming. Yeah.
What gave it away is when he was almost at. What gave it away was he was running through the hallway and he got to the door. It's like, get out of my way. Get out of my way.
He moved the guy out of the way.
Well, and the guy that came out, which clearly was like an assistant to the assistant equipment manager, and looked at him and was like, "That's Lamar Jackson. Like, what is he doing coming to the like mid game?" That was so funny. That was great. And Trace McSorley led a great drive down the field too. So
who knew how much this interview would revolve around poop?
We didn't. I think Trenni, I think you just went muted there. We can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Mic off. Sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So anyway, yeah, who would have known that this would have revolved around poop? So terrible. And that's how we're going to wrap up our first conversation ever with Trenni Kusnierek. So Trenni, where can we find you on social media? We'll have it down in the show notes, but where can we find you?
Twitter, just at Trenni, and on Instagram at Trenni NBCS.
Awesome.
And she gets her own special page on the website, so they'll be able to find her there too.
There you go. You're famous, Trenni.
So famous.
Well, Trenni Kusnierek.
I almost poop my pants next time at the Boston Marathon. Someone will know who I am.
When you're sitting down in front of the emergency room, they'll go, "You're Trenni Kusnierek."
This is the second time.
We heard you on Missing the Point. It's now 7 years later. This is awesome.
That was great.
Well,
Thanks
Trenni,
for having me, guys.
Yeah, Trenni Kusnierek, thank you for joining us on Missing the Point. For our EP, Craig D'Alessandro and Bob Kelly, I'm Joe Malkin. And once again, thank you to our special guest, Trenni Kusnierek. And we'll see you guys next time.